I never thought my 10-year-old daughter would become my savior and my weapon of revenge. But that night, as I lay on the cold marble bathroom floor with blood trickling from my split lip, I heard something that changed everything. The faint sound of Sage whispering from her bedroom across the hall. "Uncle Felix, it's me, Sage. I need to tell you something really important about Daddy. He's been lying to Mommy about everything, and I have proof. Videos, pictures, bank records. Everything." My heart stopped through the ringing in my ears from where Garrett had struck me. I could barely make out her tiny voice floating through the darkness. How long had she been watching? How much had my precious little girl discovered about the man I'd married? Just minutes before, I had been trying to explain to Garrett why I was 5 minutes late returning from the country club charity committee meeting. The traffic had been terrible, and I'd rushed home as fast as I could. But nothing I said mattered to him when he was in one of his moods. Nothing ever mattered when Garrett Whitmore felt his control slipping. "You're embarrassing me, Deborah," he had screamed, his face twisted with that familiar rage. "I provide you with everything, this house, these clothes, this lifestyle, and you can't even follow a simple schedule." The crystal vase went flying first. The crash of breaking Waterford mixed with his shouting as white roses and water splattered across the Italian marble. I had stood there in my designer dress, trembling, trying to make myself smaller, hoping his anger would burn itself out like it sometimes did. But not tonight. Tonight was different. Tonight, something in his eyes looked darker, more dangerous than I'd ever seen before. "Look at this mess," he grabbed my arm so hard I knew there would be fingerprint bruises tomorrow. "You're going to clean every bit of this up, and then you're going to explain to me why you think your little charity friends are more important than your husband." When I tried to pull away, that's when his hand connected with my face. The slap sent me stumbling backward toward the marble stairs. But he wasn't done. His fist came next, catching me in the ribs, doubling me over as pain shot through my body. "Garrett, please," I gasped, but he was beyond hearing me now. He shoved me hard and I went down, my head hitting the bathroom doorframe on the way to the floor. The world spun as I tasted blood in my mouth. From where I lay, I could see his expensive Italian leather shoes pacing back and forth, and I knew I had to stay down, stay quiet, and wait for the storm to pass. That's when I heard her voice. My brilliant, brave Sage speaking into her laptop upstairs. "I have everything recorded, Uncle Felix. The bank statements showing Daddy's secret apartments. Pictures of him with other women. Videos of him hurting Mommy. I've been collecting evidence for months because I knew nobody would believe us without proof." My blood ran cold. Evidence. Other women. How long had my baby been carrying these secrets? "Daddy thinks he's so smart," Sage continued, her voice steady despite what must have been overwhelming fear. "But he doesn't know I figured out his passwords. I know about Miss Sterling at my school, and the lady from City Hall, and Mrs. Thorne from his office. I have pictures of all of them going into his secret apartments." Garrett had moved to his home office, probably to pour himself another scotch, giving me a moment to process what was happening upstairs. My daughter, my 10-year-old daughter, had been secretly investigating the man I'd thought was just an abusive husband. She had uncovered a network of lies I never could have imagined. "I tried to protect Mommy," Lily whispered, and I could hear the tears in her voice now. "I tried to get evidence of him hitting her, but then I found all this other stuff on his computer. He's stealing money and lying to everyone and cheating on Mommy with lots of different women. If you're in an abusive relationship, know that help is available. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-7233, and they have resources for safety planning, even when financial abuse is involved." The bathroom floor was hard and cold beneath me. Broken crystal cutting into my palm as I tried to push myself up. But in that moment, despite the physical pain, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not just hope, but the burning desire for justice. My little girl had just handed me the weapons I needed to destroy the man who had destroyed us both. And she didn't even know it yet. 3 years earlier, I thought I was living in a fairy tale. Garrett Whitmore was everything I'd dreamed of, successful, charming, from one of the most powerful families in the city. When he proposed after just 8 months of dating, I said yes without hesitation. I was so young, so naive, so completely unprepared for what I was walking into. The Whitmore family welcomed me with calculated warmth. Garrett's mother, Constance, would smile and tell everyone how thrilled she was that her son had found such an accomplished woman. His father, Theodore, would pat Garrett on the back and make jokes about how he'd better treat his investment banker wife right. They lived in the kind of generational wealth I'd only read about. The Whitmore name was on buildings throughout the city, and suddenly, I was part of their empire. "Deborah's going to be perfect for our family," Constance would say at their elaborate dinner parties, her perfectly manicured hand resting on my shoulder. "She understands what it means to maintain our standards." At the time, I thought she meant I belonged. I didn't realize she meant I should know my place in their carefully constructed hierarchy. The first year of marriage was everything Garrett had promised. He would surprise me with jewelry for no reason, take me to exclusive restaurants, and tell me how much he loved having such a successful wife to show off. I was at the peak of my career, managing multimillion-dollar portfolios and being courted by bigger firms. But after Sage was born, everything began to change. Why stress yourself with work when we can afford for you to focus on being the perfect mother and wife? Garrett suggested when my maternity leave was ending. The Whitmore women have always been the foundation of our family's success. It seemed reasonable then. I was exhausted from sleepless nights with a newborn, and the idea of not having to juggle conference calls with diaper changes felt like a gift. Now I know it was the first link in the chain that would bind me to him completely. The criticism started small. The way I dressed wasn't quite right for Whitmore family events. The nursery wasn't decorated to Constance's standards. I talked too much about my old career at social gatherings. Every suggestion felt like helpful guidance from a family that wanted the best for me. But by the time Sage turned 2, the suggestions had become demands. By 3, they were accusations. And by 4, they came with consequences. "The house was embarrassing today," Garrett said after one of Constance's surprise inspections. She noticed dust on the baseboards and toys in the living room. "You made me look like I can't even train my own wife properly." I had spent hours cleaning that house, but apparently it wasn't enough. Nothing ever was. The financial control happened so gradually I didn't notice until it was complete. First, Garrett insisted on managing our investments since it was his family's money funding our lifestyle. Then he suggested I didn't need my own credit card since we shared everything. Finally, he convinced me to close my personal bank account because separate finances showed a lack of trust in our marriage. By the time Sage started kindergarten, I realized I had no access to money, no connections to my old career, and no independence whatsoever. Every dollar I spent had to be justified. Every friend I wanted to see had to be approved. Every decision about our daughter had to go through him first. The Whitmore family watched it all happen and called it Garrett helping me adjust to their expectations. "He just wants you to understand what being a Whitmore wife means," his sister Priscilla would tell me when she'd catch Garrett correcting my behavior in public. "He's preparing you for the responsibilities that come with our name." When the physical abuse started, they called it passion. When Sage began flinching whenever her father raised his voice, they said she needed more discipline. And when I started showing up to family gatherings with bruises I claimed were from clumsiness, they nodded sympathetically and suggested I be more careful. The isolation was so complete I didn't even realize it had happened. My old friends from the finance world had been gradually pushed away with excuses about being too busy with family obligations. My father lived across the country and only heard carefully edited versions of our life. My brother Felix was so buried in his FBI work that our phone calls became brief and superficial. By the time Sage turned 7, I understood what trapped really meant. I had no money, no allies, and no one who would believe that Garrett Whitmore, pillar of the community, generous philanthropist, devoted family man, was systematically destroying his wife behind closed doors. But I wasn't the only one watching and learning. My brilliant daughter was becoming a detective in her own home, and I had no idea. Financial abuse often accompanies physical abuse. If someone is controlling your access to money, documents, or economic independence, organizations like the National Network to End Domestic Violence have resources specifically for economic empowerment and safety. I discovered Sage's secret investigation completely by accident. I was organizing her closet when her laptop slipped from her desk and opened to a folder labeled School Project, Family History. But the files inside weren't about family trees or genealogy. They were a comprehensive documentation of every aspect of Garrett's double life. My hands shook as I scrolled through dozens of photographs. Screenshots of bank statements showing payments to multiple apartments across the city. Images of Garrett entering and leaving buildings with different women. Credit card receipts for jewelry, dinners, and hotel rooms that I'd never seen. Each file was meticulously labeled with dates, times, and locations. Daddy with Miss Sterling at Harborview Apartments, Tuesday 3 p.m. Daddy giving jewelry to City Hall lady, Thursday evening. Daddy's secret phone showing messages to Mrs. Thorne. But the financial evidence was even more damning. Somehow, my 10-year-old daughter had figured out how to access Garrett's business computers and discovered a web of fraud that went far beyond simple adultery. "Sage," I called softly, and she appeared in her doorway looking guilty and terrified. "I'm sorry, Mommy. I know I wasn't supposed to be looking at Daddy's computer, but I heard him talking on the phone about hiding money from someone called the IRS, and I wanted to know what that meant." I sat down on her bed and pulled her close to me. "How long have you been doing this, sweetheart?" "Since last Christmas when I got the new laptop. At first, I was just trying to figure out why Daddy gets so angry all the time. But then I found out he has 3 different phones and 5 different email addresses, and I got curious." My heart broke and swelled with pride at the same time. This little girl had been carrying such a heavy burden, trying to understand the chaos of our home life in the only way she knew how. "I learned about computer security from YouTube," she continued matter-of-factly. "And I found out that when people are doing bad things, they usually try to hide the evidence. So I started looking for what Daddy was hiding." She showed me everything. Bank records proving Garrett was funneling money from his business into personal accounts to fund his affairs. Tax documents showing massive underreporting of income. Email threads with city officials about building contracts that appeared to involve bribes and kickbacks. The internet said that when grown-ups are hurting their families, sometimes they're hurting other people too, Sage explained. So I looked for other bad things Daddy might be doing, and I found lots of them. But what amazed me most was what she had done with all this information. "I found Uncle Felix's work email and sent him some of the financial stuff," she said quietly. "I told him I was doing a school project about white-collar crime and asked if he could explain some things I found. I didn't tell him it was about Daddy at first." "What did Uncle Felix say?" "He said the documents I sent him showed serious crimes and asked where I got them. So last week I told him the truth. He's been helping me organize everything into what he calls prosecutable evidence." My brother Felix specialized in financial crimes for the FBI. If he was helping Sage organize evidence, that meant Garrett's sins went far beyond adultery and domestic violence. This was about federal crimes, tax evasion, and corruption. "Uncle Felix says that when we have enough evidence, the bad people can't hurt their families anymore," Sage continued. "He taught me about something called RICO, which is for when people do lots of different crimes as part of running a criminal organization." A criminal organization. My husband hadn't just been having affairs, he'd been running what amounted to a criminal enterprise, using his family's legitimate businesses as cover for fraud, bribery, and tax evasion. "Sage, you've been so brave, but this is dangerous. What if Daddy finds out what you've been doing?" Uncle Felix taught me about computer security and covering my tracks. Plus, Daddy thinks I'm just a little kid who plays games on her laptop. He doesn't know I'm smarter than he is. Looking at my daughter, this incredible child who had been quietly building a federal case against her own father, I realized that everything was about to change. We weren't just going to escape Garrett's abuse. We were going to destroy him completely. "When do we tell Uncle Felix we're ready?" Sage looked at me with those wise, determined eyes that had seen too much for someone her age. "He said we should wait until Daddy does something really bad, so when the police come, they'll arrest him right away and he can't hurt us while we're waiting for the courts to protect us." As if on cue, we heard Garrett's voice from downstairs, getting louder and more aggressive as he talked on the phone about some business deal going wrong. "I think," I said carefully, That really bad thing is going to happen very soon. If you suspect financial fraud or tax evasion, the IRS Whistleblower Office protects people who report suspected crimes and can provide rewards for information leading to prosecutions. The annual Whitmore Thanksgiving dinner was supposed to be the pinnacle of our family's social calendar. Constance had spent weeks planning every detail, from the imported flowers to the hand-calligraphed place cards. 3 generations of Whitmores, plus their most important business associates, gathered to celebrate their continued dominance over the city's commercial landscape. What Constance didn't plan for was my daughter's courage and my brother's federal investigation converging at her perfectly set table. The call to Felix had happened 2 days earlier. Sage had been incredibly brave, speaking clearly into her laptop camera while I sat beside her, my heart pounding with each revelation she shared. "Uncle Felix, I have everything ready. All the financial records, all the evidence about the bribes, all the proof about Daddy hurting Mommy. Something bad is going to happen at Thanksgiving dinner, and we need you to be ready." My brother's FBI training kicked in immediately. He asked precise questions, reviewed Sage's evidence through their encrypted connection, and began coordinating with local authorities and federal prosecutors. "Sage, you've done something remarkable here. This isn't just about helping your mother. You've uncovered a conspiracy that could bring down half the corrupt officials in your city." She nodded solemnly. "I know, Uncle Felix. I looked up all the people Daddy gives money to, and lots of them make decisions about things like schools and hospitals and police. If they're taking bribes, that's hurting lots of families, not just ours." "That's exactly right. Now, I need you and your mom to act completely normal until Thursday. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir. Mommy and I are good at pretending everything's fine. We've been practicing for years." Now, sitting around the Whitmore's enormous dining table, I was struggling to keep my composure. Garrett was in his element, playing the perfect son and patriarch for his extended family and business associates. He carved the turkey with theatrical flair, made jokes about football rivalries, and even put his arm around me for photographs. "Isn't Deborah looking lovely today?" Constance announced to the table. "That navy dress is so elegant on you, dear." It was the only dress I owned that covered all my recent bruises completely. Sage sat quietly beside me, picking at her food. She had been unusually calm all week, and I wondered if the weight of our plan was becoming too much for her. But when I looked at her, I saw something in her eyes that I recognized from my own reflection lately. Anticipation. The explosion came, as it always did, over something trivial. I had been helping Constance serve dessert when I accidentally brushed against Garrett's chair. His wine glass tilted slightly, spilling a few drops of Bordeaux on the white linen tablecloth. "Deborah." The change in his voice was instant and terrifying. "Look what you've done. Can't you move through a room without destroying something?" The entire table fell silent. 24 people, including business partners, city officials, and 3 generations of Whitmores, all staring as my husband prepared to humiliate me in front of everyone who mattered in his world. "This is exactly what I deal with every day," he continued, his voice getting louder and more vicious. "Complete incompetence. She can't manage a simple household task without making a mess that someone else has to clean up." Theodore shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Garrett, it's just a few drops of wine." "Just a few drops." Garrett stood up, towering over me as I tried to clean up the small stain. "This is my life, Father. This is what I come home to every day. Someone who can't function like a normal adult." I felt the familiar terror rising in my chest, but underneath it was something new. Excitement. Because everything was going exactly according to plan. His hand moved toward me and I instinctively flinched, which made him angrier. "Look at that. She acts like I'm going to hit her. Like I'm some kind of monster, when all I've ever done is try to help her improve herself." That's when Sage stood up. "But you do hit her, Daddy." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Every person at that table turned to stare at my 10-year-old daughter, who was standing with her laptop open in her hands. "Sage, sit down right now," Garrett said, his voice dangerously quiet. "No." My daughter's voice was steady and clear. "I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of watching you hurt Mommy and everybody acting like it's normal. She turned to face the entire table, her small chin raised with determination. You all think he's such a good husband and father, but you don't know what he's really like when nobody else is around. Sage, that's enough, Constance snapped. Children shouldn't speak about grown-up matters they don't understand. I understand more than you think. Sage held up her laptop, the screen displaying a folder full of evidence. I have videos of him hitting Mommy. I have pictures of all the bruises he gives her. I have recordings of him screaming at her and calling her horrible names. The room erupted in gasps and denials, but Sage wasn't finished. And I have proof that he's been stealing money from his business and not paying taxes on it. I have pictures of him with his girlfriends at apartments he pays for with stolen money. I have emails about him bribing people to get building permits and city contracts. Garrett's face had gone white. Give me that laptop right now. I can't, Sage said calmly. Uncle Felix already has copies of everything. He said you've been committing something called racketeering, and that means you're going to prison for a very long time. As if summoned by her words, the sound of cars pulling into the circular driveway echoed through the dining room. Multiple cars, with engines that suggested official business. Felix Rivera, Federal Bureau of Investigation. My brother's voice carried from the foyer as he was let in by the confused household staff. I have federal warrants for the arrest of Garrett Whitmore and seizure warrants for all financial records and electronic devices in this residence. The dining room descended into chaos. Constance was demanding to know what lies we had been telling federal agents. Theodore was shouting about family business staying private and threatening to call his lawyers. Various business associates were suddenly very interested in examining their dessert plates and pretending they weren't part of whatever was happening. But through all the noise, I heard the sound I had been waiting 3 years to hear, handcuffs clicking as they locked around Garrett's wrists. Garrett Whitmore, you're under arrest for tax evasion, wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit bribery. You have the right to remain silent. As federal agents escorted my husband out of the dining room where he had played patriarch for so many years, Sage slipped her small hand into mine. We did it, Mommy, she whispered. Now he can't hurt anyone anymore. If you have evidence of public corruption or bribery, the FBI's Public Corruption Unit investigates these crimes. You can report suspected corruption through your local FBI field office. 6 months later, I barely recognize the woman I used to be. As I look in the mirror before my first day back in the financial sector, I see someone I haven't seen in years, myself. The bruises are gone. The constant fear has faded. And for the first time since I was 28 years old, I'm making decisions about my own life and my own money. Mommy, you look like a boss lady, Sage says from my bedroom doorway. She's holding her backpack, ready for her own first day at a new school. We moved across the city to live closer to Felix, and Sage couldn't be more excited about the fresh start. The months since Thanksgiving have been a whirlwind of legal proceedings, asset recovery, and rebuilding our lives from the ground up. Garrett fought everything at first, with the Whitmore family hiring the most expensive lawyers money could buy and trying to paint Sage's evidence as fabricated by a vindictive ex-wife. But 10 months of meticulously documented financial crimes don't lie, and Judge Harrison saw right through their attempts to discredit a 10-year-old girl's detective work. Your daughter showed remarkable intelligence and courage, the judge had told me after Garrett accepted a plea deal that included 15 years in federal prison, complete asset forfeiture, and permanent restraining orders. She may have prevented years of additional fraud that would have hurt countless families in this community. The Whitmore family tried one last desperate move to maintain their reputation and control. Constance actually showed up at Felix's house, demanding that I drop all charges and return to Garrett to work through our marital problems privately. Felix handled that conversation exactly the way I expected him to. Mrs. Whitmore, your son ran a criminal organization that defrauded taxpayers, bribed public officials, and brutalized his family for years. Deborah and Sage will never be in danger from him again, and your family's business empire is now evidence in a federal racketeering case. You need to leave my property immediately. We haven't heard from any of them since, though Felix tells me they're all facing their own legal troubles as the investigation continues to spread through their network of corrupt associates. The asset forfeiture was more complete than I could have imagined. Not only did I recover everything that was rightfully mine, but as the victim of Garrett's financial abuse, I was entitled to compensation from the recovery of his illegal activities. The apartment buildings where he housed his mistresses, the cars he bought with stolen money, the jewelry he purchased with bribe money, it all became part of rebuilding our future. But the most satisfying revenge was watching his carefully constructed image crumble in real time. The local newspaper ran a series of exposés about the Whitmore corruption network. His country club expelled him. His business associates publicly distanced themselves. The buildings that bore the Whitmore name quietly changed their signage. Sage handled everything with the same calm intelligence she had shown throughout our ordeal. The child psychologist Dr. Williams had been amazed by her resilience and strategic thinking. Sage shows signs of what we call post-traumatic growth, Dr. Williams explained to me. She took a terrible situation and found ways to not only survive it but to protect others. That's remarkable at any age, but especially for a child. And protect others she had. The ripple effects of Sage's investigation went far beyond our family. 3 city councilmen were arrested for accepting bribes. 2 building inspectors lost their jobs for taking kickbacks. A city planning commissioner resigned rather than face federal charges. Most importantly for other families, the domestic violence shelter that had helped us navigate the legal system received a substantial anonymous donation, funded entirely from the recovery of Garrett's hidden assets. Last week, something happened that showed me just how much both Sage and I have grown. We were at the grocery store when she noticed a woman with a black eye standing in the cereal aisle with her young daughter. The woman was nervously checking her phone while the little girl clung to her leg, both of them radiating the same fear I remembered so well. Sage approached them carefully, carrying one of the resource cards Dr. Williams had given us. "Excuse me," she said politely to the woman. "I think you might need help with something. My mommy and I had to get away from someone dangerous once, and these people helped us stay safe." The woman looked startled, then knelt down to Sage's level. "What kind of help do they provide?" "They help with everything. Safe places to stay, lawyers who work for free, people who can help you get your own money so you don't have to depend on someone who hurts you. And if the person who's hurting you is also doing other bad things like stealing money or breaking laws, they can help with that too." Later, as we were loading groceries in my car, the woman approached us again. "Thank you," she said simply. "I called the number. Someone is coming to help me and my daughter today. I didn't know there were people who could help with the financial part too." I hugged Sage tight as we drove home. "You know what you did today? You might have saved 2 lives. Just like Uncle Felix and the FBI saved us," she said matter-of-factly. "Now we get to help other people save themselves." Starting my new position at Morrison Financial feels like reclaiming not just my career, but my entire identity. Felix offered to help me get back on my feet financially, but I insisted on doing it myself. "I need to prove to myself that I can take care of Sage and myself," I told him. "I need to know that I'll never be dependent on anyone else's money or decisions again." "You already proved that when you helped Sage bring down a criminal organization," he said, smiling. "But I understand that independence is important to you now." As I walk Sage to her new school this morning, she takes my hand and looks up at me with those bright, determined eyes that saved us both. "Mommy, do you think other kids who are scared like I was will know they can get help?" "I hope so, sweetheart. And when they do, I hope they're as smart and brave as you were." "They can be," she says with the confidence of someone who has faced the worst and emerged stronger. "Everyone can be brave when they need to be. They just need to remember that there are always people who will help if they ask. And sometimes the best revenge is making sure the bad people can never hurt anyone else ever again." My daughter is right. The best revenge isn't just escape, it's justice. It's making sure that the people who hurt families face real consequences. It's using their own crimes against them to protect others. We're not just survivors anymore. We're advocates. We're examples. And we're proof that sometimes the most powerful weapon against corruption and abuse is a determined child with a laptop and the courage to document the truth. If you or someone you know needs help escaping domestic violence, especially when financial abuse is involved, contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. They have resources for safety planning, economic empowerment, and legal assistance. Remember, you deserve safety, independence, and justice.